What's up, Devy peoples? It's EK. Kyle and I are back, and we are pumped. It has been an awesome weekend of football so far. Still some games going on. If you see me looking to the side, I might be watching Oregon State beat down San Jose State. That's going. Yeah, excited to be back with a lot of games and a full slate and so much to talk about for Devy, for C2C, for CFF Dynasty. How you feeling, Kyle?
There's, in fact, too much to talk about. I started typing in the show sheet, and I had about 40 people I wanted to talk about, and I had to stop myself, and I don't like stopping myself. So
I
left.
No one wants to listen to all that.
Everybody wants to listen to me talk about fucking the South Alabama running back room, right?
Just drone off stats about guys they've never heard of. That's what makes good content.
So it's really crazy. LaDamian Webb only played 13 snaps, even though he's the best running back on the team. Was he injured or not? We don't know.
We don't know. So look, we got a lot. We got a lot going on. We got a lot to talk about. We're gonna try to keep it snappy. We're gonna try to keep it to stuff that we think you guys care about. Because Kyle and I could literally talk about G5 football for 3 hours right now. We're not going to do that. We're going to try to give you the quick primer on what you need to be doing in C2C and Devy. And but first, what was your favorite game you watched, Kyle? What got you going?
Oh, I mean, I think it's obvious. I think it's pretty much everybody's favorite game that we saw this weekend so far. I mean, LSU Florida State's still going to happen. I think that'll be a good game. But Colorado and TCU was just incredible. I mean, that was peak college football in week one with Gus Johnson on the call and everything. Just an amazing game. I have a lot of thoughts on it. I have a lot of thoughts on both sides of the ball that I'm sure we'll get to. But I mean, that's the closest game of the week, I think, and one of the only majorly close games between Power 5 teams. So.
Yeah, that's low hanging fruit. I mean, that was definitely one of the. I mean, that's probably going to be a top 15 game of the season. Really, it was a lot of fun. Just really the coming out party for Prime and his kid and everything that they have going on there. But man, it was a hell of a game. I mean, some people are knocking Shader. He wasn't perfect in the first half, but dude, they were getting it done, and it's not like they were playing against Maine or a decent football team for sure.
Yeah. And they played so fast. They played so many offensive snaps. I think there's definitely CFF production there. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. Cool, man. All right. You want to launch right into our top performers.
Top performers. I mean, well, there's a lot of very regular names on this list that are on this list this week. Caleb Williams, 24. I don't know what stats that you put in there, but Caleb Williams had a huge game against
18 completions
and 3,195 yards, or 319 yards and 5 touchdowns. I'm guessing.
Yeah. That's what it was actually. It was actually.
Yeah. Caleb Williams has a big game against Nevada. That's what we've come to expect from him. I mean, he's just, the best player in college football, I think, and the number 1 overall pick next year. So we come to expect that from him. And then also in the Pac-12 in Washington, Michael Penix Jr. has yet another great game from him. 52.3 fantasy points for him, 450 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, and with that, obviously his 2 wide receivers, Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, both also have big games. I believe 30 plus fantasy point production for both those guys. And then Texas A&M. Texas A&M was a bit of a surprise to me. They came out and they passed the ball, and they passed the ball well. Connor Wegman looked really good as a starting quarterback. I think there's reason to believe that he could be the most talented quarterback in the SEC this year.
Yeah, I like Wegman, man. I've been shoveling coal into that fire as much as I can. I think he's just been underrated because Jimbo is just, a caveman play caller.
Yeah, but I mean, he gets a new offensive coordinator in Bobby Petrino, and Petrino apparently is willing to air it out, and air it out he did. And there were two wide receivers that saw great production because of that too. Evan Stewart and Noah Thomas both finished in the top 10 at wide receiver fantasy points for this week. Stewart put up 8 receptions for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Noah Thomas had 6 receptions for 74 yards and 3 touchdowns. So big game
Noah
from the two.
Sorry, man.
Go ahead.
I was trying to lead it. Noah Thomas, kind of the new name there. Exciting. We thought it was going to be Moose Muhammad, kind of as the wide receiver.
Or Nia Smith,
Yeah.
And then Braylon Allen, his first game as the Wisconsin running back under offensive coordinator Phil Longo, and he brings a totally new facet to his play in this one. Of course, he gets it done on the ground, 17 carries, 141 yards, and 2 touchdowns. But he also got 7 targets in this game, caught all 7, and had 25 receiving yards. So obviously those are little dump-offs, but those, in terms of fantasy, are huge for production. That's 7 free fantasy points you just got that you wouldn't have gotten from Braylon last year.
And also for Braylon's draft profile, right? Because that's been the knock. That's why people are like, no, he's the RB4 in this class. But, you give Braylon Allen, 50 catches this year, it's really tough not to call him the RB1 for Devy and fantasy football purposes, I think.
Well, there are other very good running backs, but that will definitely have their arguments too. I'm curious.
Yeah. We could argue a handful of guys there, but I just that's been the knock on his pro. That, and I don't think he has the top end speed. I think he's a 4.55 guy, but he's 230 pounds.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, not everybody can be Derrick Henry. I'm curious what his season receiving total is. I wonder if he has beaten his freshman season receiving total in one game.
He had 20 catches, 19 or 20. I looked at this a couple of weeks ago when we were doing Big Ten.
So no, he had 13 last year and 8 in his freshman season. So
there you go.
He is halfway to last year's receiving production in just one game. So definitely a change of pace for Braylon Allen, but he's still succeeding, of course. And then another top performer is the Oregon offense as a whole. I mean, this is what we expected. They're playing against Portland State. I think the only surprise to me was that they didn't keep Bo Nix out there to throw 6 touchdowns because, they're so intent on trying to get him the Heisman, but apparently not. He gets just 3 passing touchdowns, but combined with the 2 backups that saw some late play, they threw for 368 passing yards, threw 4 passing touchdowns. Bucky Irving had a huge day on the ground on just 4 carries. He got 2 touchdowns and 137 yards, added a couple of catches as well. And then Troy Franklin showed out alongside Bo Nix in the first half. 7 receptions, 106 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That is definitely a huge start for a guy that we're excited about in Devy and CFF.
Yeah, Irving with a casual 35 yards per carry. No big deal.
Yeah, that'll happen every week, right?
It's still fun as hell, though.
Just imagine what happens when he gets 20 carries and gets 700 rushing yards.
1,000 yards. But Irving is underrated. I think he's, he gets knocked for the size a little bit, but I don't know, the explosiveness and elusiveness is, carries him. So I do think he's got some Devy potential. Tough to put him in day 2 just because there's so many goddamn good running backs in this class. But, I think if this past year, I could have put him in day 2, I like him more than some of those guys. I had a couple of G5 guys that really went off too, or I guess Emory Jones did they move up this year? Cincinnati?
Yeah, so they're in the Big 12.
P5. So Emory Jones, the definition of a journeyman in college, who's now, I believe, in his 3rd program. number 3, but it seems to be lucky number 3 as he opens the season with not a big deal, just a 7 touchdown performance, 5 through the air, 2 rushing. Yeah, sure. It was against, an FCS school, but not
Eastern
nonetheless.
Kentucky.
Eastern
Not to be confused
Kentucky,
with Western Kentucky, which is actually kind of decent.
who's actually a good program, right? Wait, is Eastern Kentucky G5 or no? They are FCS, right?
They're FCS, yes.
Anyways, surprising a little bit because Jones is a guy that had hype earlier in his career, and then really last year was not able to get the job against people that we thought he was going to be able to win out against. But looks like Satterfield's doing what he does down there in Cincinnati and, organizing a program. We'll see how it goes in conference play, but nonetheless, it's interesting, exciting, and easy waiver pickup if you want a flyer on a, cheap quarterback.
I definitely think everything gets a lot more difficult for Cincinnati down the stretch than.
Yes, of course. The same could be said for, I think, 80% of the guys we're talking about right now.
Yeah, but I'm still not sold on Cincinnati having talent like I am like an Oregon or Washington.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about them a little bit more later. But yeah, I don't think that anyone's putting them in that category. But I think the coaching's good. I think they've got a little bit of talent. So we'll see. And then the other guy that I threw out there was Marcus Carroll from Georgia State. Who was the top available running back in terms of production in most of my leagues. 23 carries, 184 yards, 3 touchdowns. Georgia State, is a G5 guy. He might be good later in the season, in conference play of the weaker teams. And there's a few other guys that really had big performances too. Jalen Buckley stood out to me. He was owned in most of my leagues. So
really. I found in most of my leagues it was Keyshawn King that was rostered on Western Michigan.
Yeah, Buckley's. I looked around. He's not. Maybe people picked him up last week. So when was his first game?
I think this was his first game.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't see him out there a lot. And Jaden Ott also, racking up yardage. I think the tales of that becoming a committee have been largely exaggerated. Jaden Ott eating in his performance.
Afonso had a good game, though, too.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
I think he had 90 yards by himself.
Yeah. Jaden Ott had 9.4 yards a carry, right? So Alfonso
and they played
too.
They played a decent team, did they not? North Texas, not FCS, but.
Yeah,
Afonso had 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
There it is.
You know what? Maybe there's a situation where they're both good. Also, I think the quarterback played okay, and that was my fear, really, for that offense was just that they were downgrading from Plummer, who himself was nothing inspiring for me. But
was really good this week against Georgia.
Was really good this week. Yeah. So. All right. Anyone else where we're talking about top performers? So I guess one to throw out there, Benjamin Urasek, resurgence. My man was the guy a couple of years ago.
I am not surprised.
No, I mean, he's the most talented pass catcher there. We both had him having a major comeback season, but, 9 catches, 138 yards. I wouldn't have called that, but, I'll take it.
You mentioned Jack Plummer, so I'll mention him too. He had a great game. And then Jamari Thrash as his wide receiver 1 out of the slot, 8. I think he had 9 catches, probably like 2 touchdowns. So a big game for Thrash. I think that'll continue throughout the season. So I think that's a good name to watch.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. So I think we'll kind of segue here into our breakouts and busts. And I mean, there's a little bit of overlap between some of these categories, but these are the guys that Kyle and I really wanted to highlight for some special attention.
Yeah. I definitely wanted to give my guys some special attention.
These are basically your victory laps.
Starting in breakouts. We can both take credit for this first one. We both like this guy. That's Mikey Keene, the quarterback from UCF, transferring to Fresno State this offseason. Ends up winning the job after a pretty long quarterback battle. and goes 31 for 44, 365 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, leading the way to an upset victory over Purdue for Fresno State. So a big game for him in his first game on the West Coast. And I'm excited for the rest of the season with him.
Yeah, loving it. That system is uber productive. Mikey Keen's a guy that had moments of good play earlier in his career, right? With UCF transfer, right? And just seems to slot right in there. I mean, we both knew that he was going to get the job and he was going to go nuclear, and he has.
And he didn't even use his legs in week 1. Just kind of surprising.
He had like a couple of carries, but that wasn't what he was doing. It was mostly just chucking it. Next one's
go back and
Kyle
forth.
Speff. Oh, yeah, it was just John's your guy.
Well, okay, we'll talk about Austin GT. Jaunty's the guy in the big board series where I was like, no, we can't put him ahead of Jaunty. We can't put him ahead of Jaunty. And then, week 1, he proves it. Playing against a Washington team that's definitely better than this Boise State team. 10 carries for 44 yards and a touchdown. 4 receptions on 4 targets that he turns into 109 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. Seems to be more of the 1A than George Holani is, and Holani being the 1B, which isn't something a lot of people expected. And I think that's a huge step forward for Jaunty and his pro potential.
Yeah, loved it. Jaunty's a guy that obviously has gotten a lot of, sorry, this is all I could do for highlights, but I wanted to play some because he did look good as
TikTok.
Yes, that's what it is. Man, he looked great in that game. And, he did all the things that, we've been talking about him being able to do. You saw it in both phases. You saw him playing physical, stiff armed some dude into the ground there. And definitely one of those guys that, despite him starting his career at a lower level of college football, has NFL prospects for sure. So yeah, we can bounce back and forth. I wasn't picking up what you're laying down there, but so my first breakout's a guy that had caught my eye when I was doing the conference previews, just because who the heck else was going to be the RB1 for Colorado. And again, we're going to talk about Colorado a lot today, I think, just because there's a lot to talk about. But Dylan Edwards, go off, young man. So Edwards, if you don't know, he's a little guy. He's like a speed back. Like basically he's, a freshman version of Devin A-Chain in terms of speed and what he does with the football. He hasn't proven himself to that extent yet, but it certainly is an exciting start. Young man only had 6 carries for 24 yards and a tutty, but he had 5 catches for 135 yards and 3 more tutties. Kid is electric, basically touches the ball. He's in the end zone. There was a half dozen times in that game that he had no right getting by somebody and just purely put on the Jets and got around. So I'm excited, true freshman, first game playing, at this level. You don't like relying on scoring a touchdown on every third touch, but to me, that's displaying some talent, that there might be more to this than just the stat sheet.
Yeah, I'm definitely surprised by Edwards' performance, encouraged. I think he strikes me as a future NFL player. I don't know how productive he'll be in college on the way to that, but I definitely think he'll make it to the league in the future. My next breakout goes to another guy that I really like, who's kind of similar to Dylan Edwards in the fact that he's a little smaller, pretty fast, and that is a running back from Michigan State, Nathan Carter. Transfers in from UConn. There were concerns about whether or not he or Jalen Berger would be the RB1 at Michigan State this year, and it seems that Carter takes the job in week 1. 18 carries for 113 yards and a touchdown alongside a 21-yard reception. Meanwhile, Jalen Berger has just 8 attempts and averages like 3 yards a carry in the first game. So big game for Nathan Carter against Central Michigan. I think he seems to be the guy in the backfield, and we've seen success in this backfield under Mel Tucker. So Nathan Carter, big performance in week 1.
I thought he looked great too, man. I watched a lot of that game, and he is fast and just explosive. Like touches the ball, hits the Jets, catches the corner. I mean, maybe we'll do a film session on him later in the year. But what I liked at first glance, I was like, oh man, this kid looks like he might have NFL tools. They have him listed at 200 pounds, which was the big concern. He was playing under 200. Man, if that kid does this for the next year and a half and comes into the NFL and steps on a scale at 204, I'm excited for him for the NFL.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was a little bit of a naysayer just because his production last year came against weak teams. And I'd been very excited about him before I discovered that. So I think it's good to be, it's good for the young man to be able to prove himself against a little bit stiffer competition. I don't want to just list all the Colorado players and their stat lines, but as I was joking earlier, the answer to who to draft from that offense was just everybody. I think we'll talk about, is this sustainable a little bit more later, but oh God, I just had the sheet up. Travis Hunter, 11 catches, 119 yards. Xavier Weaver, 6 catches, 118 yards. Jimmy Horn, 11 catches, 117 yards. I was just going to talk about Jimmy Horn, man, but like right now, it seems like they're distributing the ball somewhat evenly. I can't imagine that Hunter's can really play 140 snaps or 110 snaps every game. Not if he wants to like preserve himself. I think this was a showcase game. See what he can do, and maybe they back off that a little bit. I don't know. Also, I think Prime wants to win games, so Travis Hunter is definitely winning.
They interviewed him after the game, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm ready to play another drive."
Yeah, it's something else, man. That is something else. So yeah, look, I think more will be revealed there in terms of what that target distribution looks like. But they're playing fast. They're throwing the ball a lot. Kind of got some of those air raidy kind of just like spread them out and throw it. So I don't see why we can't have 2 or 3 guys here that are successful every week. See what happens against tougher secondaries, but and I thought they all played well too. They all made good plays. I think they're all good players, and I think we'll see 1 or 2 of these guys go to the NFL. Maybe Weaver's a little bit older.
Hunter is 100% going to the NFL. Hunter's going to
be like
Hunter is the first non-quarterback off the board in his draft class.
Yes, I agree. But I think Jimmy Horn goes to the NFL too late because he's a slot guy. He's a little slot guy. But I think he goes to the NFL. And I think Weaver does too, but just probably like a day 3 pick, UDFA type. But kid looks good playing ball. So.
All right. My next name is Jordan James, a former 4-star recruit. Committed to, I believe, Georgia last year or Tennessee, one of those SEC teams. Ends up going to Oregon instead. Had a pretty solid freshman season, nothing spectacular, but comes in to this one in his first game as a true sophomore and gets 10 carries for 86 yards and 3 touchdowns, with all 3 touchdowns and most of that production coming in the first half. I definitely think he's going to get mixed in for the rest of the season. Especially near the goal line. I could see him vulturing a lot of Bucky Irving touchdowns just because he is a bigger back. And he's a guy who I think, once again, has shown his talent on the field. I think he's going to have to take his licks this year and just kind of keep waiting behind Noah Whittington and Bucky Irving. But I think going into next year, Jordan James is going to be a guy that we're talking about a lot once he can take over the RB1 role at Oregon, just because he just continues to show his talent every time he's on the field. So there's a little victory lap for Jordan James.
Yeah, no, you're well-deserved too by you and Jordan James. Bucky's off to the NFL for sure. Noah Whittington might hang around. That might be the only fly in your ointment. But
Isn't he in his fifth year?
Yeah, James. Well, maybe, I don't know. James is, I think, the most talented guy there, other than Bucky, if not altogether. I will say they it was everyone got carries. Dante Dowell got 8. Jaden Lee Mark
Yeah.
got 8. Right.
Yeah, but James got his with the first team.
Yeah, they pulled Bucky Irving when it became apparent that they didn't need him at all.
Yeah, which was after 4 carries.
After 4 carries. Right.
But there were drives early on where it was Irving and James both playing.
Yeah. No,
and Whittington didn't play, so that's that part of it.
James was a guy I drafted a lot because he was available late in those supplementals, and then kind of got off of him just because you heard crickets. He got a few carries last year, didn't look bad, just looked buried on the depth chart. And usually I'm nervous if a guy can't get work his second season, but it looks like James is doing that. So fears quelled. My next breakout here is a Devy Doe's favorite, which I think actually originates with you, Kyle, although I've been a big champion of this guy.
I think we were both there.
Medias. Yeah. J. Michael Sturdivant, the game, 5 catches, 136 yards, and a touchdown. Just instant chemistry with Dante Moore, but was fine with the other kid throwing the ball
Garbers.
to. Garbers. But is it just Dante Moore's offense now? I mean,
should be. It 100% should be.
He outplayed Garbers, so I don't. What are you doing if you're not playing him?
What's crazy to me too is that both of them jumped Colin Schley. Colin Schley, I kind of thought would be the QB2 maybe, but Moore jumps him right off the bat. So
Garbers had been around in the system, right? That's why he.
And Sturdivant, just like Schley and Moore, is also in his first year at UCLA. Played last season at Cal, transfers in, and does that in his first game. So very impressed by Sturdivant out there and excited to see what's to come.
I tell you what, he's in his last season at UCLA too. Mark that one down now.
Pretty sure he's a true sophomore, but
he's not.
You make that call.
He's a redshirt sophomore.
Oh. Okay.
I don't. He's going to get drafted. He's got all.
No, I agree. My next and final guy is a true freshman. I kind of just filtered through true freshmen and found the guy who impressed me the most, and this is a bit of a surprise. A true freshman wide receiver at Mississippi State, Creed Whittemore. He was rated as an athlete coming out of high school, was a high 4-star, the 12th rated athlete in the class, and had 4 receptions for 59 yards and a touchdown through the air, and then also had 2 carries, which he turned into 57 yards and a touchdown. Definitely seems like an athletic player. Mississippi State was playing a nobody school, Southeast Louisiana, so I'm sure that has something to do with it. But getting on the field as a true freshman in your first game, always impressive. Love to see it from guys who we weren't. There are guys who we were like, yeah, this player's really good. Zachariah Branch, Deuce Robinson, Jonte Cook. Like those guys all got on the field week 1, but we were all expecting them to do that. Creed Whittemore is a name that I have heard nothing of. So to get 2 touchdowns in your first collegiate game, pretty impressive.
Indeed, it is. I had one last one. I think we deleted it. I had 2, I guess, here. I don't know. One, Damian Martinez for Oregon State, playing right now. Currently has 18 carries, 145 yards, and a couple of tutties. He's also got a couple of receptions and another 19 yards. Looks like that game just wrapped up against San Jose State, but I think there was some fear that he was going to be in more of a committee this year, and looks like that fear was not founded. Are you in on Martinez now, Kyle?
No. It's San Jose State.
He's good. He's a good player.
I don't think he's a bad player, but he also had no touchdowns. Just to be clear, you said a couple of tutties. 0 touchdowns.
Yeah, no,
he got his touchdowns swiped by DJ Uiagalelei and Deshaun Fenwick, which is what I was most scared of.
Yeah, it could happen. And And then the other breakout I had here was Deion Burks, redshirt sophomore wide receiver for Purdue. With 10 targets, 4 catches, 152 yards, and a couple of scores. He's a kid that had some hype last year and they got hurt real bad, had a neck injury. And looks like he has slotted into the shoes that Charlie Jones left behind. And if he's that guy, then that's a guy you want to roster.
I'm surprised you didn't bring up a name that would be make me a little salty. Being one Wesley Grimes from Wake Forest, who I dropped in a league, and you picked up after a touchdown performance with like 5 receptions, I think, and 100 yards. So,
yeah. Also a lot of fun. I think Deion's the one this year, but I think Grimes is going to be the guy.
Banks. Jamal Banks, the one this year.
Wait, I'm mixing up teams. Oh, you're talking about. Sorry, you're mixing up teams.
I get
Purdue and Wake Forest confused because they're both black and gold.
I'm just finishing the breakouts by bringing that up.
Yeah. All right, and we had some busts to talk about too. You got to get like the saxophone sound, Kyle.
Here's our first, and that is Ohio State and their offense as a whole, playing against Indiana. Not a top tier opponent by any means. Obviously, still a Power 5 school, but not the best team they're going to play. That's for sure. And they came out struggling to move the ball in both phases of the game. Passing wise, Kyle McCord came out and started as we knew he would, and then got benched just once. Like Devin Brown had like 2 drives, I think, which isn't what I expected. Especially not what I expected once Kyle McCord struggled, and struggle he did. 20 completions on 33 attempts, 239 passing yards, no touchdowns, and an interception, and a pretty bad interception. He rolled out right and then threw across his body towards the middle of the field, which is like, QB 101. Don't do that.
Unless you're like Caleb Williams or Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, exactly. So that's not great for him. Devin Brown, like I said, came in and then threw 3 attempts, completed 1 pass for -2 yards, and handed off the ball a few times. And then the running game, good. Better than the passing game, but still not impressive. They averaged just 4.8 yards a carry as a whole. Travion Henderson leads the way in attempts with 12 attempts for 47 yards. Chip Trayanum behind him with 8 attempts for 57 yards. So a very efficient day for Trayanum on the ground. And then Mayan Williams mixes in with 7 carries for just 25 yards, but gets the 2 touchdowns. So vulturing those red zone carries as he does. And then the wide receivers, not what we expected at all. Marvin Harrison Jr., many believe he's the best wide receiver in college football, myself included. Had 6 targets in this game, caught just 2 of them for 18 yards. We thought the connection would be there with Kyle McCord. I believe these 2 played together in high school, but it was not. Didn't seem to have the timing right between the 2 of them. Did not get his season off to a fast start. And then Emeka Egbuka had just 4 targets, caught 3 of them for 16 yards. Are you worried about both of these guys going forward into this season?
How can you not be? I mean, maybe it was just a bad game for McCord, but for me, kind of all off season, the lack of like effusive praise and the lack of a clear winner in the QB contest has been a little bit concerning, right? Just enough to like most of you all in the Devy community were like, oh no, they're both awesome, they're both great. And just like, it doesn't usually happen like that, right? Like if you don't have a QB1, you probably don't have QBs, right? Like that's the old statement, right? So I was willing to be like, I drafted McCord when he was floating around in one of my supplementals, spent some money on him there, but maybe it was just a bad game. I'm old enough to remember CJ Stroud starting slow when he took the reins over. for the offense, had a couple of bad games, and then quickly put those fears to rest. And I'm not worried about Ibuka or Harrison from a Devy perspective, although if it's a really bad season, you wonder if it doesn't, just like slightly weigh down the draft stock from being like top 5 and top 15 guys to a few picks later. But for CFF right now, I'm terrified because if you have those guys, you invested highly in them and you were relying on them to win your leagues. And it looks like, I'm not saying it's going to be like this every week, but it looks like they might not be consistent. And that's what you need from a guy that, was your wide receiver one and probably you're like 101 to 103 in a draft. How do you feel about it?
I agree with you completely. But I'll be optimistic. I think I'm still optimistic. I think one of these quarterbacks will find a way to perform. I didn't think McCord looked completely horrible. I thought the ball came out of his hand really well. Just needs to improve the decision-making a little bit. Missed some open guys. Obviously threw that awful pick, had another one that should have been picked. But maybe he just had the yips. I don't know. It's his first career start, like we said. So,
yeah,
he's got Brown breathing on his neck.
Nipping at his heels.
Yeah.
You would have liked to see him smooth it out in the second half, though. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I started rough, couple of bad drives, and then it got better. But I don't know. I think either it'll get better or we'll be seeing Brown out there in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And if he don't get better, then they're going to move heaven and hell to get a transfer in. So a bit late for our fantasy hopes this year.
They'll just start Aaron Nolandy as a freshman next year.
Yeah, why not? And we had a lot of the same busts too, so just kind of like rock through them here. Jaquinda Jackson's a guy that, maybe had some Devy hype, and we all thought he was going to at least do a lot of damage for CFF this year. I mean, he ended the season on an absolute tear last year. And it was like, Pac-12 defenses for the most part, but God, who'd they play this week? It wasn't anyone special, right?
Florida.
Oh, they played Florida.
Yeah.
He's got a good defense, so maybe we don't freak out. But it was real bad. Like Jaquinda Jackson was in like 3 of my lineups, and he got you like 3 points. So not a good feeling.
I definitely think Florida is a top 3 defense they'll play all season, and probably the best run defense they'll play all season.
Yeah, and I wonder if you and I were talking to Micah Bernard, who's been kicking around there forever, who's an extreme athlete, but we never thought he was a real threat in terms of running ability. Out-carried Jackson and out-snapped him, but maybe that was more a function of them knowing that they weren't going to be able to move the ball on the ground because he's their scat back.
Yeah, it was also just a weird game for them. I mean, Cam Rising was out, Brant Kuthi was out. We expect both those guys to be the leaders of the team, so could be a totally different game plan than what we see the rest of the season. You never know.
Still, you'd think you lean on your RB1, right? Like,
but
QB1's gone.
But QB1's gone, so they're loading the box, right?
That's true.
Right?
True. Yeah, I'm sure there's more checks to it than's obvious to me sitting on my couch. All right. You want to lead the next one?
Sure. Dorian Singer, I put him down 2 catches for 37 yards. We expected USC to spread the wealth like they did in week 0. They did that again. But Singer, once again, a little disappointing. I think he just had 2 targets. Week 0, he just had 4 targets, 4 receptions. Does not seem to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. We'll see if that changes when they start playing tougher opponents, if they have to rely on him more, and if they're just trying to get these freshman looks against bad teams or something. He's obviously still fast. I don't think that changed. So I think he'll probably have some big plays down the stretch against Pac-12 teams. But
so right now on USC, he has the 5th most receiving yardage. He is tied for the team lead in receptions, though, at 6. But still, nonetheless, that's problematic for his draft profile and problematic for like CFF. You can't start this kid. We were hoping for something akin to what Addison did last year, which was like okay for CFF and enough to really, round out his draft profile. And I don't know you're going to get that from Singer at this point. You and I were talking a couple of months ago about this, where we said when we were doing this team previews, we said, what does Dorian Singer really do that Mario Williams doesn't, other than being prototypical size? Mario Williams runs fast. He's just not of size. Taj Washington apparently also runs fast. He is their receiving yardage leader by a good 80 yards over Singer. So, look, we knew they were going to spread the ball out, but you were hoping that he was going to do enough to kind of defend that draft position of people having him as a day 2 pick. And we're going to need to see more from him down the stretch, or Singer ain't going to be a top 100 pick.
USC in this game had 9 guys in between 14 and 19 routes. So everybody has been involved in this offense in the first 2 weeks. The question is that a product of them playing bad teams, or is that what we're going to see all season? And I think that they do have the talent deep enough to do that all season.
Yeah, I think the answer is both, right? I think Lincoln Riley always has a rotation going, always uses different packages. Also, yeah, you don't need to play your best guys against Nevada. Stanford, Arizona State, I don't know. Colorado might be the first real challenge on their schedule. Not that Arizona State's terrible, but Arizona
State is terrible. Arizona State's terrible.
Are they bad? Really bad this year? I thought they were going to be a little better. We were thinking they were going to be a little better.
They beat Northern Utah by 2 points on Friday night.
So you and I had hopes that they were going to be a little better because the coaching changes.
It's growing pains for them. I mean, Jaden Rashad in his first year taking over the starting job as a freshman, that it'll be a rough season for them, but I think the long-term outlook is there.
That's a guy we could have dropped in breakouts too. Jalen Rashad starting as a true freshman and being okay. Not great.
Against Northern Utah.
Yeah, right. True freshman, though. You know what I mean? True freshmen usually don't play great. All right. Jalil Farouk was one of yours, but, was nominally supposed to be the wide receiver 1 at Oklahoma this year.
I think it's a big deal because Drake Stoops went down in this game, and then they still didn't lean on Farouk. They leaned on Gavin Freeman after Stoops went down. The thing is, Farouk did lead the team.
Jaquazi Pettaway.
Yeah, Jaquazi Pettaway played well too as a true freshman in his first game. Could have put him on the breakouts. The most
targets and catches. Yeah.
Should have put him on the breakouts.
Should have. We're slacking.
But yeah, Oklahoma beats up on Arkansas State for 60 minutes, and Jalil Farouk gets 2 targets, no receptions. Still leads the team in routes run, so there is that. But yeah, Drake Stoops had 4 catches before he got hurt. Gavin Freeman had 4 catches after he got hurt. Jaquazi Pettaway had 10 targets, 9 receptions for 56 yards. That's a crazy part about Pettaway for me is he's the fastest player on the team, and his ADOT was 4.
Yeah,
6.
They were most of those were in the second half of Jackson Arnold, and I'd imagine they were trying to give Jackson Arnold layups, right?
Yeah. Pettaway's ADOT was 0.4 actually.
Greens, you don't love that, but that's again, they're just trying to get the young guys involved in the game.
Yeah.
So jumping to my guys, and you come back to yours. Corey Rucker is a guy that I've been high on for a couple of years. Thought he was going to be good at SC last year. Destroyed his knee, and back home to Arkansas State. I really thought he was going to be a CFF superstar, and he had 1 catch. He did have 4 targets, so it could be more just maybe he's a downfield role and the quarterback sucks, but I don't know.
I don't think the dream is dead. Arkansas State is going to play 11 teams that are much worse than Oklahoma throughout the rest of the season. Rucker leads the team in targets with 4, was second among wide receivers in routes run. So I think there's still long-term outlook there isn't horrible. I'm not rushing to drop him or anything. going forward. I'll give him a
Ain't
few
starting him,
weeks
though.
against. Yeah. But
Uh,
I don't know. I think we could see like 5 receptions for 80 yards and a touchdown next week against a bad team.
Yeah,
A
could
worse
be. I
team.
don't think you need to drop him. I don't know, man. If you're a CFF only guy, I kind of want to be able to lean on you. Even if it was like 4 catches, 50 yards.
But this is like the prototypical do not start this guy this week because he's on a horrible team and he's playing a top 15 team.
Yeah, fair enough. Chimere Dike, I think, is more concerning. I think you were going through this earlier, and he was like 4th in routes run. All the beats had him as the wide receiver 1 all off season. It's a guy that statistically, like in secondary metrics, looked good on paper in previous seasons, but 1 catch. I think he scored a touchdown, but I don't care. I'm not starting him, and I'm probably just. It sounds like all the transfers are the starters, basically. So
and Skylar Bell, yeah. Yeah. So Will Pauling transfers in from Cincinnati. Bryson Green transfers in from Oklahoma State. Both those guys get 5 targets. Skylar Bell gets 5 targets. Braylon Allen, as we mentioned, got 7 targets. And DK gets 1 target. DK does lead the team in routes run with 28 compared to second place Bryson Green with 22. So there is that. But
yeah, again, it's week 1. Weird stuff happens. Maybe
and Mordecai was bad.
Yeah, they might have just told him not to throw the ball downfield too. Maybe DK
it seems like it. Mordecai's ADOT in this game was 3.
Yeah, right. So maybe DK was running around downfield, and that's why he didn't get targeted. I don't know. Probably shouldn't drop either one of them. I can be really aggressive in some leagues. If there's guys I know right now that like I want over them, I'm going to drop them, but I'm not dropping them for nobody. I'm not dropping them just to drop them. But
yeah,
I'm dropping them for Jimmy Horn.
Yeah,
I'm dropping them for any of the guys we talked about in breakouts, pretty much. James Jordan, yeah.
If your name's Dylan, I'm dropping DK for you.
Yes.
And then I'll do my last 2 real quick. Jordan Curley, 2 for 5 yards at the SMU receiver on just 3 targets. Jordan Hudson, the other wide receiver at SMU, transferred in from TCU. He had 4 targets in this game, turned that into 2 catches for 72 yards and a touchdown. So Curley definitely didn't seem like the number 1 receiving option we thought he would be. That went to the tight end RJ Maryland. So it'll be interesting to see if he can bounce back. We had high hopes for him in CFF. And then Richard Reese, the Baylor running back, 7 carries for 14 yards. And the Oklahoma State transfer Dominic Richardson just came in and ate his lunch. He had 16 carries for 79 yards. It definitely seems that Richardson has taken the RB1 role at Baylor. And it also seems that Baylor is horrible. They lost to Texas State in this game. So don't think I can rely on Richard Reese in the next few weeks.
The irony is that Dominic Richardson wasn't good enough to keep his own job at Oklahoma State last year. So
yeah,
I don't know, man. Whatever. Then my last 2 busts are kind of like the same lines. It was Tanner Mordecai, who hurts me because I like him. I thought he was going to be really good in that offense. And I started him in multiple places, and he hurt me. 24 for 31. His completion percentage was high, but for 198 yards, it's almost tough to do, right? Completing 24 passes for 198 yards.
Couldn't get it done against Buffalo of all teams. Yeah, definitely.
Buffalo, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Maybe that's why they weren't turning him loose. Miscues, whatever it is. And then Luke McCaffrey, who just every year I want him to really take over and break out. And yeah, he played Texas. It was a tough team. But you'd have to think his game's mostly catching slants and screens. So when he goes 2 catches for 10 yards, it is disheartening. That's what you got from him last year. You got a 150-yard game, and then you got 2 catches for 5 yards in the next game. And it's just tough. I wanted to be able to start him for CFF this year. I don't know if I should. He's probably going to ride the line.
I tuned into that game a couple times. JT Daniels had no time to throw, 0. He was out of the pocket immediately. And McCaffrey had a couple drops from when I was watching that were pretty sad.
Yeah. All right. Sad stuff here, but we're moving on.
Well,
onward and
don't
upward.
forget this last name you have in here, Tamarian Harden.
Harden. I forgot him. Yeah.
TJ.
So he wasn't terrible. He went for like 76 yards, but if you were drafting him where he was going, you were relying on the beats that were telling you that Carson Steele was not starting, and Carson Steele, in fact, started. TJ Harden was.
They both had very similar stat lines. I mean, they both went for like 80 yards.
Steele got all the touchdowns.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So if TJ Harden's efficient, yeah, sure, but like they're the same age. It's not like Steele's like a fifth-year senior. Like Steele's like a third-year player.
Harden's a sophomore, ain't he?
Oh, okay. Oh, but whatever. Steele's not like a fifth-year senior. Is my point.
Yeah.
So if they're in a timeshare, they're in a timeshare unless someone transfers, right?
Yeah.
Kind of disappointing.
Well,
but Harden played well though.
Yeah, I think he's still talented. Had a good game, so not dropping him.
7 yards a carry. No, not dropping him. It just feels like you can't start him right now. You know.
One guy though that I am dropping that I didn't put in the show sheet at running back, Kai Thomas, Kent State, did not see the field.
I didn't think Kai Thomas was good. He's just.
Is the P5 guy transferring down to Kent State?
I know, but like P5 guy that lost every job he's had since he's been in college. Like every one of them.
Yeah, so. He was on the milk carton this week. He was missing. Gavin Garcia took the all the work at Kent State. I think Garcia will have some good games in Maction because they're a very run-heavy team, it looks like. So they were outmatched this week. So he had like 2 yards of carry. But I think in the future, Gavin Garcia is a name to watch out for in CFF. And Kai Thomas is a name to drop. I already have dropped him from a number of my teams.
Okay, so we're going to talk. Are they for real? Kyle's first, are they for real? Is the Colorado offense, is prime time on the field for real? What do you think, Kyle?
So I think Sean Lewis is a very good offensive coordinator. We talked about this in the Pac-12 preview. I think Sean Lewis is definitely head coach level OC. And I think he'll be a Power 5 head coach next year. And he's done a terrific job, and this offense plays really fast. They played a ton of snaps on offense, and that definitely helps these guys, especially with these short passes. I think the thing that gives me the most pause, 50% of their passing yardage came after the catch in this game. A lot of these TCU TBs were like trying to give arm tackles to these wide receivers, and it just didn't work. Jimmy Horn and Xavier Weaver definitely looked electric after the catch. They definitely had some nice little juke moves, but this TCU DB room is definitely not the one that got them to the playoff last year. Definitely much worse. It's just a TCU team in general that's much worse. So I'm not sold on Colorado yet. I still think I'm impressed enough to say that they're a bowl team now. But I don't think they're more than an 8-win team at the very best. I don't think they're going to hang with USC and Oregon and Washington.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to hang with USC, but I think they're for real. I mean, I guess what's the expectation? Are we saying, are they for real? They're going undefeated and they're a chance, they're a playoff team. I don't think anyone's saying that, but
well, the people who didn't follow this story in the offseason and are just tweeting about the Colorado offense after watching this one game did seem to think that. There were a lot of people hyping this up as, oh, this team just beat the runner-up from last year and whatever.
Yeah. Watching the film, I mean, we got Shader Sanders highlights up, which also is Jimmy Horn highlights and Dylan Edwards highlights. So it's kind of why we just cut to the chase with that. But I mean, these guys are like wide open a lot of the time. So I do think, the play calling's creative. They are spreading it out. They're using a lot of like mesh and crossers and stuff to kind of help guys get open, get them in space. But I think the concept, right, of like you have these playmakers, and I think the guys are talented, and putting them out in space and letting them work. I mean, it's like San Francisco, right? I'm not saying that it's Kyle Shanahan, but it's the same kind of idea that they're working there. And I mean, look, I think it looks sustainable to me. I think they're going to have a good season. I don't know if, I'm not putting them in the playoffs, but I do think that I think they're a bowl team, right?
I think they're going to be a good CFF team. But I think the only player who really proved anything to me that I didn't already know talent-wise, I'll say players, was Dylan Sampson and Travis Hunter.
Dylan Edwards.
Dylan Edwards. I'm going to do that for the rest of my life.
Probably. Yes, I had to correct you in the show sheet as well.
But yeah, I mean, Travis Hunter looked like an amazing wide receiver and an amazing corner at the same time. It's going to be incredible just to watch him play for the rest of the season and everything. But
so they got
is Travis Hunter for real? Do you think he's going to get 14 targets again?
Oh, I cannot imagine him sustaining this for a whole season. So I think the kid gets hurt if they do. You just can't play that much P5 football. Like I don't know, dude. Maybe he's like that type of freak, like the Adrian Peterson type.
He's 100% a freak. That's insane.
But just your body breaks down. You know what I mean? I don't think he can maintain that level of performance for a full season. You know what I mean? It's just statistically improbable.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited about Weaver and Horn for the rest of the season, but I think they'll play defenses that are much better throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think they're going to win a lot of games. I do, and I think they're going to be productive for CFF. I think the formula they have. Yeah, some teams are going to figure it out better than TCU did. I think TCU embarrassed themselves. I think TCU were looking through this one, right? Or maybe just didn't have the personnel to figure it out. But I think you expected them to play better defense than they did. I mean, we were just watching those kids get lit up out there. But I don't know. I think we'll know a lot more in a few weeks. But I would say they're for real. I think you also manage expectations. You know what I mean? Like, I think if they get 8 or 9 wins, then like they've done very well. Which that means
And I do want to talk about TCU really quick. I have some thoughts that I just need to put out there. The Sonny Dykes offense still looks really good, with Kendall Briles calling the plays, but not the same as it was last year. Chandler Morris still looks like Chandler Morris. He hasn't taken a step. I think he threw 2 picks in this game, and they were both pretty bad. The wide receiver room, nobody's replacing Quentin Johnson, it looks like. But I was really impressed by the tight end, Jack Wiley. I'm putting in waiver claims for Wiley. I think he'll have a productive season at tight end. He looked like the best pass catcher on the team at times in this game. And Amani Bailey looked very explosive. He's a guy who definitely doesn't have long speed, but showed a lot of burst in this game. So,
yeah,
impressed by that.
I love it. I got nothing to argue with about any of that, really. They're going to say Amani Bailey, where it's like even against, it seemed to be a decent defense. Yeah, he was running for like 14 to carry. I mean, that's pretty nuts. And
he had one 70-yarder from their own 1-yard line where if he had an extra gear, he would have made it to the end zone. But so that is my one knock on Bailey, is that he just does not have that NFL long
Yeah.
speed, but
and he ain't getting the goal line carries because Trey Sanders got all of them. So that looks like an offense you could maybe start both of them because I think they'll have better days than this, right? And I mean, they still scored a crap ton of points. You know,
yeah,
it was a boat race. It was a boat
and
race.
they've always been good at running the football, and they've always had two backs. I mean, whether it be like last year, it was Amari DiMercato and remind me, he also went to the NFL and is a really good Kendra Miller. Yeah,
right. But that was kind of more like Kendry was the lead. DiMercato was like the 1B or the lightning guy, right? And this time it kind of looks like Amani Bailey is the 1, Sanders is the 2, but Sanders is getting the goal line. So a little bit different of a breakup. Gosh, we have a lot to talk about. We're gonna have to kind of speed racer through a couple of these, the ones we care about less. So I guess you tell me in 2 minutes or less. Is Cincinnati for real? I mean, Emory Jones, Xavier Hutchinson, not at all. Why not?
They played Eastern Kentucky in this game. Eastern Kentucky's not very good at football. I do think the Scott Satterfield offense really fits Emory Jones's strengths. However few strengths he has very well. So I do think Emory Jones will have some CFF productive weeks against some of the weaker Big 12 teams. But I think when it comes to, the teams that actually play defense, the Texases, the Kansases of the world, I think they'll struggle in some of these games. Henderson did look good, though.
Do you think Xavier Henderson is a CFF asset this year?
Yeah.
I think he is.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to do this every week, but I think he's going to be a guy with some ups and some downs. But I think he's a clear wide receiver 1 there.
Yeah, that team brought in like 4 or 5 transfer wide receivers, and all of them were just kind of meh. So I don't think there's any better competition on the team. So,
and I feel like they've generally had like a wide receiver 1 in that Satterfield offense, right? Like a guy or 2 guys that get a pretty high concentration of targets the past few years. Like last year was Tyler Scott and the one other kid.
Satterfield was at Louisville last year. And the last few years.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, Marshawn Ford had some good years.
That's the record.
I don't know. But Malik Cunningham had some very good years, and Emory Jones is a very similar quarterback. So I do like Jones for CFF. For sure.
All right. Enough said about Cincinnati. What do you got? Here?
Washington State. Ben Arbuckle taking over as OC, the former OC from Western Kentucky, and he brings that air raid with him. They threw for, I think, like 400 passing yards in this game, put up 50 points against Colorado State, which isn't a bottom-of-the-barrel program by any means. Not anything special, but also not horrible. And they did really well in the air in this game. I think Cameron Ward looked pretty solid. And a couple of these wide receivers ate, and not the one that I thought would, which is kind of disappointing. Lincoln Victor had 14 targets in this. He's a 5th-year senior who started his career at Hawaii and transferred to Washington State with Nick Rolovich. He had 14 targets, 11 receptions for 168 yards. Meanwhile, Josh Kelly, the UNLV transfer from this year, kind of the red zone target, the tallest wide receiver on the team by a large margin, had 9 targets, of which he caught 8 for 110 and a touchdown. And then DT Sheffield was the guy that I was most excited about. He's kind of fits that slot mold similar to Victor, but he's a lot faster, a lot more explosive. He had just 4 targets in this game, caught 3 of them for 19 yards. I don't know what to make of this split in terms of wide receivers. I was hoping Sheffield would be the one, and he clearly isn't in this game. I don't know if that's – my question is, is that the real case? Is Lincoln Victor going to be the wide receiver 1? Because if he is, you need to pick him up. And is Sheffield going to get 4 targets every week?
Yeah, so are you putting claims in on Lingard?
On Victor? I think you have to.
Yeah.
I think anybody with like more than 12 targets this week, I'm willing to put a claim in on if I have somebody on my roster I want to drop. Definitely. So
yeah, and if you're listening to us and not watching us, we've got some Washington State highlights going on up here, and Cam Ward looks good, man. And what we're seeing right now, I mean, yeah, it's not a top tier defense, but just the ball placement is kind of the things that we were expecting him to do, transferring up. But it just seems like he took a little bit of time to really adjust. Plus, last year he didn't really have very good weapons.
Yeah, and it's a new look offense in terms of wide receiver talent and a new offensive coordinator. And then that new offensive coordinator does seem to be bad for the running back, Nakia Watson, who was a top 15 running back last year. I think he averaged more than 20 fantasy points a game.
Mm-hmm.
And this game, he had 7 carries for just 15 yards, caught 3 passes for 16 yards, and a receiving touchdown, bails out his CFF day. But that's not the production that's going to get him in the top 15 again. So not super excited about Watson for the rest of the year anymore.
Yeah. I'm very excited for the couple of Ward shares I do have. I mean, he's a kid that could have an NFL future still. If he does, not this year, it would be like plays well this year, plays well next year, comes out in the 25 class, I would think.
I think he'd be like, what, 23, 24 if he did that?
Who cares these days, man?
Yeah.
Kenny Pickett can do it. Why not Cam Ward, you know? Hendon Hooker can do it. Why not Cam Ward, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he'd have to play really well this year to get to day 2, right? Like
he's on pace.
Yeah,
I think he had like the 4th highest quarterback output in CFF this week. So
yeah, he'd have to go nuts to be.
Either way, you're happy to have him on your C2C teams because he's putting up CFF points. What is that pass? That was a
shovel. I took. Yeah. Sorry. Cut it off right when you're getting the words out. Okay. Jackson Dart, Trey Harris. I mean, that was a big question for me too. I've been kind of like anti-Dart just because I don't know, man. I watched a lot of film on them last year, and he just didn't look sharp. Right, would be the thing, and it definitely didn't. They didn't trust him to have passing volume, right? And yeah, you had 2 NFL caliber backs. I get it. You don't really need to throw the ball much, but they just didn't seem to have a balanced attack to me last year. And maybe that was the wide receiver talent, but I read into it as being Dart more than anything else, that they just thought he wasn't ready or just really didn't have it. And then, they kind of told me that this offseason again, by going into the portal and getting 2 other talented quarterbacks.
But then they didn't tell you that because he won the starting job.
Well, maybe he's taken a step.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if you're Spencer Sanders, you didn't come there without the promise to compete for the starting job and have a reasonable chance to win it, right? So maybe Dart just took a step this year. And then Trey, I only score touchdowns, Harris, with the 6'133" line, six catches for 133 yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean,
yeah, he transfers up from Louisiana Tech and does that in his first game. He had 9 targets in this game. Very impressive.
Yeah, and he's a guy you were high on, or the beat I was high on. The beats have been talking about him. Slot guy, but a big slot, power slot, not a little guy.
Hey,
I mean, that is.
Speaking of guys you were high on, your boy Aiden Williams had 7 targets in this game.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he caught 2 of them.
Well, who's the quarterback though? Was it still Dart?
I don't know. It probably wasn't. It was probably either Sanders or Howard.
I think you're
probably Sanders.
You're probably more excited that he got 7 targets than you are bummed out that he got 2 of them, right? And then actually, Aiden Lee as well got on the field, got a catch, got a touchdown. So
a 34-yard touchdown too.
My theory all along has been that those 2 guys both have a Devy future, and they both seem well on their way to erasing the year 1-0 for themselves, which is pretty cool. A couple more blowouts, and they'll both hit the markers we want, which is cool. Yeah. So what do you think? Is this like obviously they weren't playing the best defense, right? They're playing
Mercer, an FCS program. I think this is for real with Jackson Dart, and I feel like I've said that every year. So maybe I'm wrong again. But I think Jackson Dart's going to put it together in this offense this year. I'm not completely sold on Trey Harris yet. Obviously, the 4 touchdowns on 6 catches isn't going to happen every week. Jordan Watkins had a very impressive game himself, just didn't get the touchdowns to fall his way. He had 6 catches for 111 yards. And then Zachary Franklin is still not active yet, and I think he'll have a role in this offense in the wide receiver room as well. So I'm not sold on Trey Harris yet, but I do think Jackson Dart has a better I'm not putting a claim on him that's significant enough to actually get him.
You're not throwing like $10 at him. You're throwing like
I would throw like $2 on him if I didn't get somebody else.
I think if you want him on your roster Wednesday, you probably have to throw $10 at him.
Yeah,
people are going to look at the stat line and be like,
I agree.
Also, I mean, I don't know. Like did you check like route distribution and things like that?
Yeah, I have it right here in front of me. Trey Harris ran 21 routes, while Jordan Watkins ran 29. Dayton Wade ran 26. And then Aiden Williams, 18. Michael Triggs, 17. So he's definitely starting. But like I said, Franklin not playing in this game, I think, has some kind of role in that. Yeah. I do think Franklin's the most talented.
Their tight end one not playing, Prieskorn.
Yeah, Caden Prieskorn, yeah.
So, yeah, it could be. He looks good. Lights, man. Like, yeah, he looks good, man. He's going up and getting the ball. He's winning contested balls. He's breaking tackles. So he might be a good Mingo replacement, honestly. Like kind of the same height, build. I don't know if he's that athletic. Mingo's a freak, but kind of seems to be the role they have him in right now, which might be exciting. Mingo was passable at least. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting one. You're definitely going to have to pay to get him. I don't know. I'm on the fence because if he's the wide receiver 1, I think it's going to be a valuable role to have. But, yeah, I'd rather have, like, Ashlock. I'd rather have Jimmy Warren, I think. So,
yeah.
All right. Who's next?
Jaquavius Marks, the Mississippi State running back. My immediate reaction was no, and then I kind of looked into this a little more, and I'm on the fence now. He had 19 carries for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns. Mississippi State playing this game against Southeastern Louisiana, so like scrubs. But kind of the narrative that I've written with Marks all off season, and I tend to believe, is that obviously they change a coaching staff. Mike Leach no longer with us, and they bring in an offensive coordinator that likes to run the ball much more than the air raid that they used to run. So I did think Marks would have some good games against these bad teams, rushing the ball. But what surprised me in this game was that he still had 5 targets, of which he caught 4 for 59 yards. I don't know. Maybe in his years under Leach and where he had 60 to 80 targets every season, he's just learned to catch the ball so well that they still have to use him in that role. In which case, there's still fantasy points to be scored.
Yeah, he's good at it. He's a good pass catcher. So if he's going to catch 5 balls a game, he's a good CFF asset. NFL, I don't know. UDFA,
no,
right?
Not really. Yeah.
Oh, right. This next guy is more fun for me to talk about because this is a guy that I was hyping, one of the ahead of the curve ones for me. That's Dylan Sampson, the Tennessee back. Of all people, my, orange bleeding friend over here. You think you'd get your running back's name? Right?
I remember when Dylan Edwards committed to Colorado, I was like, I didn't even know he was in the transfer portal.
God. What's funny because their profile is similarly. They're both speed backs. They're both undersized, and they're both hyper explosive. Obviously, Sampson's been around a year longer, and look, Sampson's a guy that I caught early in my summer scouting. I took some benchmarks, just numbers that I could get off Campus to Canton that identified numbers that were thresholds, that guys that were going to the NFL were hitting, not like super scientific with it. I didn't build a model. I just like flagged some markers, right? And Dylan Sampson hit all of them as a true freshman. And yeah, it's easy to be efficient when you're a change of pace guy, right? But I don't know. I think we saw the talent on film this weekend. What's your take on him?
I mean, he's the RB3 in this offense.
Is he?
Yeah. I mean, I'll pull it up, but I'm pretty darn sure that
they got like
Wright
almost
and Jabari
identical
Small
carry counts.
had more snaps.
They all had within like 2 carries of each other. Which I don't know when in the game they occurred, though. I didn't watch the game. You might know better than me.
I know Jalen Wright got the first drive. Jalen Wright had 12 attempts, 115 yards, and played need snaps. Jalen Wright had 28 snaps. Dylan Sampson had 27. Jabari Small had 26. So I guess this has turned in from a 2-headed backfield to a 3-headed backfield.
To a true mess, in other words. But
true
Sampson gets the goal line work.
Yeah, a true mess where all 3 guys are going to be semi-productive and all 3 guys are going to have big weeks. It's going to be really annoying.
Yeah, start them all in a beatdown, but in a tight game, I don't know. You're probably going to wind up with 1 guy that was useful and 2 that weren't. But I think,
I just think in tight games they'll play more of Wright because Wright's the best back by a long shot. At least in this game, I mean, Wright had 9.6 yards a carry. Sampson had 4. Small had 5.2.
Sampson got the goal line carries. It's tough to get 9 yards when you're running it in from the 2, dude.
They weren't even from the 2. They're from like the 8. I don't know. Sampson did look good bouncing the ball outside. He's not going to take any work between the tackles, though, is the thing.
Yeah, got it. Do you think he's a Devy talent?
Yes, I think he makes the NFL.
Yeah, but like day 3 guy?
I could be convinced that he's a day 2 guy, but he has to take the job. Like he could be a day 2. I don't even think so. But Jalen Wright and Jabari Small both have to go pro.
Right, and then next year Sampson has 1,000 yards. Sure, I could read that story. All right, Keandre Lambert-Smith, is he for real?
Probably. He had 6 targets. I mean, I think we both felt that Drew Aller was going to have a great season, and we wanted to find which wide receiver was going to pop out for him, break out for him. And we were proven right on the first point. I mean, Drew Aller had an amazing game, looked really good against West Virginia. And Keandre Lambert-Smith led the wide receiver group in fantasy points because he scored 2 touchdowns, had 123 yards, and 4 receptions on 6 targets. He's a guy who we thought had talent coming out of high school, and he's doing it now. I don't know. It's tough. Harrison Wallace, the other wide receiver, had 8 targets and caught 7 for 72 yards. Which of these? I don't know which guy is really going to be the guy. That's why I put it down.
So
I don't know.
Do they have to be one? I mean, if Drew Aller is a top 5 NFL draft pick, that level of quarterback, and they have a balanced offense, it can support 2 guys.
Yeah.
I guess the bigger question for me is, does like Malik McClain or like Dante Cephas like sneak up and like,
Cephas was not.
He got
Cephas
1 catch.
Was an afterthought in this game. I totally forgot about him.
I don't think it's him.
That's quick.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm decisive with week 1. You got to make moves. Sometimes I drop guys and then I'm like, oh, I'm an idiot. But I usually rather regret the things I did than the things I didn't do.
That is fair. Cephas had 5 snaps, 5 routes. So yeah, I think Cephas is a drop.
I think he's out. Yeah. All right. You had Sam Pickney on here. Why do you have Sam Pickney on here?
Because he led the nation in targets this week. 18 targets for Sam Pickney this week. Obviously, Coastal Carolina playing UCLA, got into a bit of a shootout there. Grayson McCall had to throw it, and he slung it to the wide receiver Sam Pinkney. We think they have 2 good wide receivers between Pinkney and Jared Brown, so it was a little surprising for him to hyper-target Pinkney in this game. But I think that's definitely a good sign for Pinkney in his first game this season. So excited for him going into the rest of the year. I don't think 18 targets is sustainable, but I think it is for real that he's going to have a very good CFF season.
Yeah, I think he's a CFF monster. He was cheap in drafts too. I don't know why, man. I got him like 10th, 11th round sometimes, and he was good last year. Like, it was pretty set up well for him and Jared Brown both to have good seasons this year. And Brown had an okay game too, right? Just not a Pinkney level smash. So yeah, I'm all in on Pinkney for CFF. Plus, I like the fact that he did it against P5 school. You know what I mean? So yeah. I think against weaker schools, I think you're going to see some video game numbers out of him.
Yeah, especially if the defense isn't great and those weaker schools stay in those games.
Yeah. So I think we're going to have to kind of like rapid fire are they for real? But for the most part, I think we can. Some of them we've talked about a lot already. So let's just go quick. LJ Johnson. Third college at this point, right?
Second. No.
Second.
He started at Texas A&M, transferred down to SMU this year.
Never played at A&M. Though.
Correct.
And I thought there was like, did he get in trouble?
Are you thinking of the wide receiver?
No, I thought LJ Johnson got in trouble. But anyways, smashed, right? Like 7 yards a carry in this game, couple of tutties. Heftily outperformed the other transfer.
Kamar Wheaton?
No, the other transfer. The kid from Miami or whatever.
Oh, Henry Parrish.
Oh, it's not even Knighton. Jalen Knighton.
Jalen Knighton.
Parrish had a good game. Parrish is still there. But can he be a Devy guy still?
Yes. I think SMU gets enough eyes. They're moving to the ACC in a few years. And they've gotten guys drafted, whether it be Rashee Rice or the wide receiver before him. So, and I think they'll be good. I think Preston Stone is a good quarterback, and I think RJ Maryland will have scouts there to see him. So I think people will get to see LJ Johnson here at SMU, and I think a good start for him. Had some breakaway runs.
Plus, if what we heard about him as a prospect coming out is accurate, he is a freak. He's purportedly a 4.4 guy at 215 pounds coming out of high school. So
yeah, and this offense features running back well, and they tend to score fantasy points. So excited about him, I think.
Okay, what else we got? Shader Sanders, we talked about. We're done with that. Mikey Keene.
Well, we got to answer the question. Is he for real?
Yeah, I already said that. Yeah, I think he's good. I think he gets drafted high. Yes.
I don't think he's 510 yards a game for real.
You don't have to be.
I don't know. I don't think he's actually as talented as the stat line suggests. I do think he's good. I'm not sold on him being amazing. I don't think he's showcased enough to be.
Pedigree bump
I don't think he's showcased enough to be a first round pick. He did not.
Game.
He didn't push the. Yeah, and it's the best game he's ever had, and I don't think that's fair to expect.
You need the deep ball if he's going to be around one guy.
Exactly.
I think,
yes.
I think if he does this for the rest of the season, he gets drafted, but like round 2.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's unless this is a fluke, he's getting drafted, and it's not round 4, 5, 6. He's got the hype machine already, man. Like the hype machine is real.
Yeah.
Like it's real.
Yeah.
Mikey Keene, CFF superstar. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
They beat up on Purdue, so I think they'll beat up on Mountain West teams.
Yeah, Mountain West teams are going to get beat. I guess this is my question I asked you earlier. If you have 2 waiver picks and you're a year and you're a competitive team on the college side, are you using one on Keene?
If I need a quarterback, sure.
Yeah. All right. TJ Finley, Texas State. You were super high on Texas State in the offseason because of coaching changes, which you can talk more about now if you want. Finley takes the lunch out of the hands of Malik Hornsby, who was purportedly going to start.
No, he wasn't. He was never reportedly going to start. We were just all excited about him because he has so much potential. And we just thrust him into this role that, Malik Hornsby is going to be the guy because we're all so excited about him. And TJ Finley was horrible at Auburn.
Yeah, Finley's been horrible everywhere. Anyways, goes for 300 yards, 3 tutties.
Against Baylor. And wins the game against Baylor. Yeah, I think he's for real. I think this offense is very, very nice for quarterbacks, and I think TJ Finley is going to be playing at a level where he is a very good player. Obviously, that is not the case in the SEC, but I think that will be the case at Texas State. And I think he has a great wide receiver room. I mean, Ashton Hawkins is there, who didn't even have a really good game this week.
Hawkins should have been in our bus column.
Joey Hobart had a very good game, though, this week, and he's a very good wide receiver. And they had some other guys go off, too. So I like TJ Finley the rest of the season. He's a guy that I'm going to try to pick up if I need a quarterback in leagues where I have unlimited waivers. I'm not rushing to get him in limited waiver leagues. But
Finley or Keene? That's easily Keene for me, but I'm curious what you have to say.
I don't know. I have to look at the schedules. But I think Finley has more weapons. Keene threw the ball more. Keene had 44 attempts. Finley had 30. So I guess I'll lean Keene.
For me, it's not even close. Like Keene would be a top expenditure for me, and Finley's more like a $1 at the end of my list guy. But all right. So Todd Washington, currently the wide receiver 1 for USC, 19.5 points per game. He has been the deep threat. He has had 5 targets, 5 catches, 2 touchdowns, 150 yards in 2 games. Can this sustain?
He looks explosive. I think he's definitely a little gadgety. I think he'll be gadgety when it comes down to Pac-12 play. But he's been good in that role. He gets it done. He gets to the end zone. He gets yardage. I don't know. I think Robinson and Branch are going to be so good this year.
I think by the end of the season,
once they get ready,
they're the top targets, honestly. Or maybe it's like the beginning of next year, but
I think Washington does enough to get himself drafted.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if he catches 2 deep balls from Caleb every week for the rest of the season, you ought to have put a claim in on him now, right? Like you should have thrown $1 on him because that's a 15+ point per game player.
Yeah, you can't count on those deep balls every week, though.
You might be able to. I don't know. They're airing it out. There's so much talent. It's not like he's drawing top corners. He's probably burning the DB3 from other teams, So
yeah, there's so much speed to cover, I guess, between Branch, Singer, and Washington.
Yeah. I mean, and Caleb don't care. He's like, oh, this dude's open. I'm gonna throw a bomb to him. I think Caleb has rapport with Taj. He's played more with Taj than anyone else there except Mario. So, it might be a pattern forming. We'll see. I'm probably not putting a waiver in unless I got a really bad team, just because there's so many guys I like this week. But I could see if he's still out there in a couple of weeks and some of my other claims don't work out, I could see throwing the buck on him.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Gary Bryant, 7 catches, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns against Portland State or whatever. I get it, but could he be the wide receiver 2 for Oregon, and do you care?
Yes, I care about the wide receiver 2 for Oregon. Could he be it? Yes. Gary Bryant Jr. led the team in routes this week because Troy Franklin was pulled off the field after he ate. He had 28 routes. Tez Johnson had 22. Trayshawn Holden had 22. That's the competition for him, truly. And he definitely outperformed him. He had 7 targets. Both those guys had 3 and 4. So, I think there's a case to be made that Gary Bryant's the wide receiver 2 here. But I want to see it one more week to say for sure.
Yeah. All right. Is it for real the Michigan State passing offense?
No.
You don't think they'll throw more in competitive games? Because you like McCarthy, okay, right? I think we both like him.
Michigan or Michigan State?
Oh, I meant Michigan.
Okay, yeah, you said Michigan State. I was like, what?
Oh,
I thought Noah
bad.
Kim wasn't even good.
No, I mean, no. I'm off Michigan State entirely right now. I'm dropping guys.
Except for Nathan Carter.
Will Michigan throw more this year? And are you interested in
32 attempts against East Carolina? I think that means they'll throw more. You don't try to tune up your passing game against bad teams if you're not actually going to use it.
That's a good point. You would have just had the 2 freshman running backs run them over, right? Yeah.
But wow, Roman Wilson, 6 receptions, 78 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He seems on a mission to get himself drafted. So,
yeah, some people are high on him. He looked explosive. He looked explosive last year too. I'm suspect from a Devy point because it's really late breakout. You know what I mean?
I mean, everybody on that team at wide receiver has looked explosive. They just haven't had production in college. I mean, Nico Collins, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Andrew Anthony, all these guys looked explosive. They just never did anything to warrant CFF value.
Yeah, partly I think it's Harbaugh plays the vets. You know what I mean? You can't break out early in Michigan. Just don't let it happen. The one sophomore got on the field a little bit, Clemens, but he didn't do anything. So I'm not hanging on to him where I have him.
I don't know. I think they'll still try to pound the rock. I mean, they still have one of the best running backs in the country behind one of the best offensive lines in the country.
2 of the best running backs in the country.
Yeah.
All right. But that's all I got. You got anything else? Are they for real, Kyle?
Nah.
All right.
We'll move on.
Let's hit waivers. We don't need to spend a ton of time on this. We both got a list. This is honestly, I've got 12-man queues going in some of my leagues.
I will have them once I set them, but I haven't set them yet.
Yeah. I didn't overlap any of the guys you have, which actually our lists look pretty different. We're both very into Noah Thomas and Bailey Ashlock and Eric Brooks. Yeah. But after that, at Corey Crooms, I think I just missed. But I wanted you to go through, and we don't really need to talk. We talk about these guys, a lot of them already, but I guess guys like Brooks, we haven't. So give the quick one off. What percentage of your budget are you throwing in a range, or tell me the exact dollar amount so I can put $1 more.
Yeah. So real quick, Pafeli Ashlock is the guy we mentioned last week as a week 0 ad, and he proved it again. Had another great game. This time against Stanford. Yeah, this time against Stanford. So he is somebody that I really want on my teams, especially if I'm CFF. competing, because I think he'll be like if I was playing CFF Dynasty, he would be a 80 type guy, because I think he stays at Hawaii, and I think if he stays at Hawaii, he has 3 great years of production.
At least.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think at C2C, he's probably, I think at C2C, he's probably a 50 to 60 guy. Out of 100. Yeah.
Wow. You think guys are going to throw 50 on him?
I think in limited waiver leagues, yes. I guess in unlimited,
I got it. Yeah. Sorry. I think because all the ones that I commission are unlimited ones, where I'm like, you kind of want to be judicious with that, because you know what I mean? Like, you regret those $20 bids.
The league I think about the most is a 4 waiver claims per season. So I'm like, I got to use 25% on every one or something.
My favorite ones are ballers and wars that like we're just like I love it. I'd be being like, who's gonna be in my inbox? Christmas morning on Wednesday, right? So much fun. Yeah, so I think in the unlimited waiver leagues, I'm like $10 on Ashlock. I really want him, but that's to me a high bid.
I would put more than that. I'd go.
You think
25 plus?
Yeah, I don't know. I got this long list of guys that I think they're going to be good for CFF.
Yeah, I think he's going to be really good for CFF.
I get Eric Brooks. What are you putting on Eric Brooks? Eric Brooks.
Eric Brooks is a 5th-year senior. Buffet Ashlock is a redshirt freshman. That's the difference for me. That's the main thing for me. Eric Brooks, the slot wide receiver for Fresno State, had a really great game in week 1 against Purdue. 9 catches, 170 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 12 targets. Seems to be the favorite for Mikey Keene. This is a guy who's not going to the NFL. He's 5'7". He's a 5th-year senior.
But there's always an Eric Brooks. You know what I mean?
There's always an Eric Brooks. Yeah.
But if you dump your whole load on Ashlock, you're missing out. You know what I mean? Like, you could get an Eric Brooks in week 0 next year if you're paying attention. Right? I don't know. It's tough for me to go like a quarter of my budget for the season on a guy that's not a Devy guy. It's hard.
I agree, but
I feel like you can get
at this point
for cheap.
In a C2C league, though, with a guy like Ashlock, you're getting the same amount of years of production as you would a guy who goes pro, a senior who goes pro. Like,
it's true.
I don't know.
All right.
I really like Ashlock. Eric Brooks, I'm spending about 5 on at most. I mean, he's got 1 year. I think it'll be a very productive year, but I'm not.
I might even a little bit less, depending on like what's out there, but I think other people are going to spend. I'm okay letting someone else have Eric Brooks.
Yeah, because I think they'll spend up because he's number 2 on the list of guys when you look at it, because he had a ton of points.
I just think the difference between him and like Dion Burks or like Jimmy Horn like isn't much. I think I'd rather have Horn. I think Horn's got an NFL future. And so
yeah. I mean, Horn's 34% owned and Brooks is 0% owned. So in your tougher leagues, Brooks is not rostered and Horn is.
No, right. All right, Noah Thomas. What do you think he's worth?
Noah Thomas, the true sophomore Texas A&M wide receiver who had 3 touchdowns in this game. He's 6'6" or 6'5", and seems to be the red zone target. Donovan Green, their tight end, is out for the season, so I think they've turned to Noah Thomas to catch touchdowns. And I think, like I said earlier, I think Connor Wigman's possibly the most talented quarterback in the SEC. And they seem to want to throw the ball now. So I like Noah Thomas a lot. I think there's a possible NFL future there. So I'm willing to spend 10 to 15 on him.
Yeah. 6'5" is tough, though. Not a lot of 6'5" wide receivers in the NFL. Couple.
Yeah.
You gotta be able to do a lot of other stuff. Plus, he's a year 1-0, right? So you're
I think he had 2 receiving touchdowns as a freshman, so I don't think.
So that gets him clear.
I think so. Maybe, I don't know. I could be wrong. He had like 5 catches, 2 touchdowns, 70 yards last season.
Yeah. So he hit like 1 marker, but you really want a couple of markers, so the 8. All right, fair. You're probably getting Noah Thomas if we're in a league together. I'm probably not throwing that high at him, but I get it. It makes sense. If he is a Devy guy, you spend money well. I just think it's a little bit of a marginal profile. He's going to be in Evan Stewart's shadow this year and next year.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. I was going to say if he's not a Devy guy, doesn't he have a great season once Stewart is gone? But that is 3 years away.
2 years from now, right? If there's not someone else that's like, oh damn, they got a quarterback now, and they get transfers in, and but they do like their homegrown guys for sure at A&M. So I'm with you. Yeah, I'm probably throwing a little bit less than you on that one, but I get why you would. And that's the sort of thing that might make me foolish, right? Being miserly with my dollars in the wrong places. Who's Jacarius Caston? Talk to me about him.
Jacarius Caston is the wide receiver 1 for Southern Mississippi University. He was a guy that I picked up on waivers last season, and a guy that I recommended on this show last season, because he had like 2 straight games in week 3 and 4 where he was at like 25 points a game, and then the next week after those 2 games he got hurt, missed 3 games, came back really slow, and then put together another couple of really good games at the end of the season. So he's a guy who did it last year and seems to be doing it again. He started off the season with 5 receptions for 104 yards and a TD. He's owned in just 2% of leagues, so he's a guy that I'll gladly throw a dollar or two on, and I think he's a guy that not a lot of people are going to bid on. So, Caston.
If I hadn't found him yet, you can probably get him for $1, right? Like maybe some other CFF oriented guys will be more into him.
Yeah, I think Chris Moxley has mentioned him before, but yeah, that's all I've heard.
All right, Dante Wright,
the former Colorado State wide receiver who was fantastic as a true freshman there, and then was phased out of the offense in favor of Torrey Horton. Transfers to Temple to play with EJ Warner, and immediately out targets and out snaps the incumbent wide receiver Ahmad Anderson Jr. Dante Wright catches 9 passes for 83 yards in this game. He is rostered in just 8% of Fantrax leagues. He is definitely a guy that I would throw another dollar or two on, because I think he'll have a good CFF season, and I think EJ Warner steps up his play a little bit for the rest of the year compared to this week 1 game.
Yeah, was not great this week. Wasn't terrible, but I was hoping for something sharper. I'm sure that he'll have better days ahead of him. And then Corey Crooms was, I pointed out during the game, Crooms had the hype from the beats, and we were kind of like, how is that possible? Because there's just a few other guys that I was high on Spencer. Spencer's dead to me now. He was not even in the game plan. You were right about that one. But Corey Crooms was very much so in the game plan. 12 targets, 7 for 63 on a team that looks like dog poo. But hey, that means a lot of short targets to the slot receiver, right?
Yeah, and that was a bad weather game, if I remember correctly. So 7 receptions for 63 yards from Kaliak Manis to Crooms. I think this is going to be a pretty safe wide receiver, a pretty safe, 12 plus points a game for Corey Crooms, because I think he'll catch 6 to 8 passes a game. So you need those guys on your team, so when they catch a touchdown, you get really excited.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right. Mikey Keene, if I need a quarterback, might be my top ad. Again, I'm super high on him. I just think you've got a couple years at least at him as a CFF superstar. We've seen it before with Fresno State. Hopefully Ashlock's my top non-quarterback. I think we're in lockstep on that. I just give me the guy that's averaging 20 points a week over the guy that caught 3 touchdowns this week every time, right? Mm-hmm. Dylan Edwards, I'm super interested in, man. This is a young guy that, he's not going to score a touchdown on 50% of his touches, but he is explosive. He's part of the game plan as a true freshman, and he's catching passes at the running back position. Like, these are all good things. I don't know.
He's a guy that I'm not adding for CFF potential, though. I'm adding him for Devy potential. I think once Alton McCaskill gets back on this team and healthy, I think we see a lot of him. And I'm sure Sampson will vulture some touchdowns and make some big plays.
Edwards.
Holy crap. I'm sure Edwards will vulture some touchdowns, make some big plays along the way. But I do think Alton McCaskill will be the RB1 eventually for Colorado.
Yeah. It's hard to bet on 8 touches a game for CFF purposes, even if he is averaging an obscene yard per touch, which I think he will continue to.
And I think he'll continue to catch passes. So I do see, 4 or 5 receptions a game, which is 4 or 5 points.
Yeah, not the way he's playing. All right.
Yeah, I mean,
Dylan Sampson's on my list too, and I feel all the same ways about him. My gut says you have to spend a lot more to get Edwards. Edwards will be, will be producing as a true freshman in a way Dylan Sampson didn't. But otherwise, it's kind of all the same, right? We think that they're guys that have a future at the next level despite being small. The NFL is obviously not staying away from this undersized speedback profile anymore. James Cook, Devin A-Chain, right? And these guys are in that mold for sure. So I got Keandre Lambert-Smith out there. He's owned in 78% of leagues right now, which those numbers are probably a little bit skewed, but I don't think you got to spend up. He doesn't have the new toy shine on him. He did score a lot this week, but I think you can get him for a reasonable price and have a great CFF asset. He probably plays in the NFL, but I don't think there's anything you got to worry about from Devy. Roman Wilson, do you?
I think he could be.
Could
he
be.
Has the
he's
talent
athletic.
to be.
He's
I think he has
athletic.
the talent and athleticism to be if he's productive.
It's just a tough profile for me when you really haven't been able to take the work over from guys that weren't significant. You know what I mean? You played backseat to Parker Washington for 3 years. Parker Washington's a day 3 pick. Parker Washington's not an NFL starter. So I think
I'd rather pick up Harrison Wallace than Lambert-Smith.
Yeah, so my number 9 item here just says Penn State wide receivers, right? It's Harrison Wallace and then also the kid that came from
Malik
Florida. McLean actually played really well too. Harrison Wallace has been there longer. I think he got the targets. I think you see that. I feel like mostly for waivers, I'm coming from a CFF point of view because I just feel like it's rare that you really get like high-end Devy talent here. But like I want to win my CFF leagues. Like, yeah, you can, but God, for all you know, I'm going to pick up Keandre Lambert-Smith and he's going to have a Rice type ascension and wander into round 3 of the NFL draft. Like we just don't know that much, right? So give me the guy that's at least going to score points now and help me win. It's kind of usually where I'm coming from. So Lambert-Smith's on my list. Roman Wilson's on my list for the same thing. Could stumble into the NFL draft. The one guy we haven't talked about much was Deion Burks. His highlights look good from that game, man. He was breaking tackles. He was getting vertical after the ball.
That game from Purdue was the exact opposite in terms of usage that I expected. I expected TJ Sheffield to be the main wide receiver. It was Deion Burks. I expected Devin Mockabee to be the pass catching running back, and it was Tyrone Tracy. So, not how I saw Purdue coming.
Yeah. Yep. And then the other guy, I've noticed Jimmy Horn's available on waivers in a lot of my leagues still. He ought not to be. If Hunter's not the wide receiver one there, I think it's Horn. They matched leg for leg in targets. And again, I just can't see Hunter doing this every week. It seems unsustainable to me. So that's what I got. And then most of those guys, I'm throwing a few bucks at though. I don't like unless I see a clear NFL future for a guy, I'm throwing a few bucks at him. 4 or 5. I think they're going to be a popular waiver ad. Like I said, I'm okay letting people take some of those guys unless they're really filling a spot I need. I don't know, man. It could be Roman Wilson this week. It could be Cornelius Johnson next week. Like, you don't know.
Yeah, I like to spend up on week 1. That's the thing.
I usually do as well, but I don't know. I see a lot of guys here that have the potential to be useful.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you'll get a couple of them for like $4. Right. If I put a $4 bid on all these guys, I'm probably getting 2 of them. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. I'm with you. I think that's what I got. That's what I got. I got one more name for you here because I was just doing some data scouting while you were talking last. And Creed Whittemore is currently leading many categories. That's the guy from Miss State that you said, many categories of his class. And there's a fella named Barry Jackson of 2.41 receiving yards per attempt.
I mentioned Barry Jackson when we talked about Cincinnati. I literally have an article about him in the WordPress that I'm writing right now.
Yeah. 13.5 PPR points so far, but 2.4 receiving yards per team pass attempt. That's a class-leading number. Whittemore is right behind him. And there's Trent Hudson from New Mexico State, who has been averaging almost 14 points per game there. So he's a little bit interesting. And then behind him is Greathouse, Petaway, Deuce, Mikey Matthews.
Yeah.
From Utah.
Mm-hmm.
Then,
I had kind of given up on the Barry Jackson article because I was like, really? This 3-star? I'm going to write an article about this little 3-star guy? But, God, I really wanted to see him on the field this week, and I'm glad he got on the field. I wasn't able to check the Cincinnati stats to see that before this, but I'm glad he got on the field.
Yeah, 15% dominator in that game. Not a huge reception share, but a lot of yardage share and a 5.24 EPA per play. So he must have had like a couple of big plays, but yeah, he got a 65-yard pass. But that's good, man. It's true.
Is that all he did?
That's all he did.
Oh, dang. He played 4 snaps.
He played 4 snaps, got a touchdown. He's probably playing more next week.
That's true.
Okay. I think that's enough from us. Please tune in again. We hope this is useful for you guys. If you're not following Kyle at KO Fantasy, you ought to be. I am at EK Baller. Let us know how we're doing. Jump in the chat. Hop on, say hello. And if you're listening to this, check out the YouTube version as well, because we do put some cool highlights on there. Sometimes we put some cool stats. Kyle's got actual graphics working now. We're upping our game this year, trying to bring you the best version of Devy Dose that we can. So with that, I'm EK. That handsome man's Kyle. We're out.